Revelation 3609. From the 18th of November 1945. Perfection of God. Purpose of His will. Great and mighty is God, and His love knows no bounds. His nature radiates profound wisdom. His abundance of strength is invincible, and His will only strives for perfection, and therefore everything that has emerged from His eternal creative power is perfect. It is recognized by His unsurpassable wisdom as good and right for the purpose it is intended to serve. What comes forth from God can never be deficient, otherwise He would not be perfect, otherwise also His power would be limited and His love would not be infinite. God is supremely wise, and His wisdom is coupled with a will that can make all His thoughts take form through His power. Thus nothing is impossible to Him. He can do anything He wants, but He only wants what His wisdom recognizes as purposeful. And purpose is unlimited bliss for that which once emerged from His strength in all perfection but became imperfect through its own will. His will is never active in the opposite direction. Never will He carry out or prevent something through His power that would render the purpose invalid, unless the human being's free will is decisive, which He well respects, even though He cannot approve of it. But God's will is eternally unchanging, it is good and only aims at perfection. Yet what has become imperfect opposes His will with great resistance, for it does not recognize the most perfect being, the being which is love, wisdom and strength in itself, otherwise it would have to submit to Him unconditionally. Its own will is to blame for its lack of knowledge. Of its own free will the originally perfect being has deprived itself of all power of knowledge and plunged into a state of ignorance from which only free will can release it again. And thus it does not know about the strength and power of the Supreme Being, it does not know about its love and wisdom, it does not know about the blissful state of perfection. And therefore it does not recognize its own imperfection and is therefore in a state of deepest distress if God does not come to its aid. Everything God does is a means to lift the imperfection, to help the one who once fell away from Him of his own free will to become perfect again, to find its way back to Him in order to become blissfully happy. And what He does by virtue of His will and His love and wisdom inevitably leads to this goal, even if it takes endless times before this goal is reached, if the imperfect person's will resists. Only when the resistance ceases does the beingness begin to realize that it is imperfect, it begins to suspect that a supremely perfect being is its creator from eternity and that it must strive towards this supreme being. And with this quiet realization its ascent begins. It begins to align the imperfect with the supremely perfect being, it begins to subordinate the will to the will of God, and it recognizes everything God does as wise and based in His infinite love. And as soon as this state is reached, the being can no longer sink into the state of imperfection, it can no longer defect from God forever, for it merges with the elemental power from which it once originated through unceasing striving upwards and is unspeakably blissful for all eternity. Amen.